Hello and welcome, it's Frances here. Thank you for coming back to my channel. And if this is your first time here, well then I bid thee welcome. If you do like the content that you hear and see, you might wish to subscribe because I do upload a variety of topics on a rather ad hoc basis. But most of them, as you may already be aware, are pretty raw because I have no editing skills whatsoever, so you just see me as it is, unless of course I've got a PowerPoint presentation that I've worked on. Anyway, enough about that. I thought I would do just a quick video on this new moon, which will be on the 3rd or the 4th of December. It's actually the 4th here, so Saturday here in Adelaide, and it's also going to be a solar eclipse. Now, as I've mentioned in previous videos when I've talked about astrological timings in the moon, I'm not an astrologer. I don't pretend to be an astrologer. I do follow a number of blogs and vlogs, I guess you call that, from other astrologers who actually are accredited, and pull out the information that appeals to me. So this is sort of a combination of these astrologers that I list below and what they've said that sparks an interest in me, because it seems like every astrologer has their own particular interests when it comes to looking at the stars. And as I did mention in the last video about the full moon lunar eclipse, which was in Taurus, I went down a whole number of rabbit holes due to the amount of information available. And the same thing has happened here in relation to this solar eclipse on this new moon in Sagittarius, largely because there's a lot of stuff happening in the skies above us. So it goes beyond more than just using the new moon as a manifesting moon, as most people who do lunar magic tend to use it for. And in particular, the majority of astrologers who are sort of magically inclined, shall I say, have actually, I wouldn't say warned, but recommended that you hold off on any manifestations for a number of reasons, which I will get to in a moment. So just some basics about this moon. The timings that I'm going to give you are in Adelaide, or Australia Central Time, Adelaide time. So go onto websites such as timeanddate.com. You can put in your location and it'll come up with the timings for you. So this new moon will actually be taking place here in Adelaide at 6:13 p.m. on Saturday the 4th of December. And it's also a solar eclipse. So a solar eclipse occurs when the sun and moon are in conjunct. That means they're in the same sign, right next to each other. And the light of the moon, sorry, the light of the sun is temporarily blocked from the earth as the moon moves between the sun and the earth. It will actually be taking place over Antarctica. So it's a very southern lunar solar eclipse, and unless you live in Antarctica, you probably won't see it at all in its entirety. Southern reaches of the globe, including southern Africa, southern America, South America, New Zealand and Australia, we will see a partial lunar eclipse. We'll see part of this total solar eclipse. I keep calling it a lunar eclipse, it's not, it's a solar eclipse. It will start round about 3:59 p.m. here in Adelaide. That's when the first location will start seeing the partial eclipse begin. The first location to see the full eclipse will be around about 5:30 p.m. here in Adelaide. This is Adelaide time. The maximum eclipse will be at 6:03 p.m. The last location to see the full eclipse will be 8:36 p.m. and the last location to see the partial eclipse end will be 8:07 p.m. As I said, go to websites such as Time and Date, put in your location, and it'll give you the time according to where you reside in the world. So you may or may not have noticed, but in the last couple of weeks between the lunar eclipse and this upcoming solar eclipse, heightened emotions, an increase in psychic awareness, or your intuitive abilities might be a little bit stronger, or even the need to finally end and let go of relationships, of people, of ideas, of concepts, things that are no longer in alignment with you. And this is what the eclipse energy, whether it's solar or lunar, tends to do, is help us release things. So, as I said, this solar eclipse new moon has a lot of information around it. So I'm going to go through some of the notes that I have written here, and hopefully they will make a little bit more sense to you. So this will be the last new moon for 2021, and it's sort of relevant. That's coming in at the end of the calendar year. It's connected with a lot of karmic endings, bringing dramatic ending to this year once and for all. It's also going to be the last solar eclipse or eclipse of the sort of Aquarius, Sagittarius and Gemini sort of alignment as well. And this alignment's been going on since 2020. So Sagittarius is the mutable fire sign, so it's about change, looking towards the future. Immutable means, again, endings. It comes usually at the end of the seasons in the Northern Hemisphere, where we are at this time of the year. It's the end of autumn, beginning of winter. Here in the Southern Hemisphere, it's well and truly the end of spring, beginning of summer. As such, they tend to mediate change and change in their moods of expression very frequently. So they sort of change their moods a lot. They're often described as being diplomatic and assisting others through transitions. However, they can be very inconsistent, uncommitted, and somewhat unreliable. So that's a little bit of a lowdown about Sagittarius. So we've got the solar eclipse in Sagittarius, wrapping up the set of Gemini Sagittarius eclipses, which have been focused on communication and education, which is Gemini, while Sagittarius is about governing ideas, belief systems, the higher mind, etc. So as this eclipse is also connected with the South Node. The South Node is in relation to past lives or the karmic tides. It has a connection with how we process the changing of our core beliefs, the foundation of how we view the world, that can cause a lot of upheaval and uncertainty, and we certainly are seeing that currently. So there's an underlying reminder for us that we need to go easy on ourselves. We also need to allow ourselves time to grieve if we're ending relationships. And it really doesn't matter what sort of relationships. They don't need to be intimate. They could be friendships, they could be work colleagues, work relationships. We are beginning to move on, or wanting to move on, and realizing that in order for us to be able to move on, we have to let go of things. We have to release the familiar in order to make way for a new experience. So solar eclipses have resulted in a number of interpretations, some of them being that if the celestial light goes away from the earth, problems will arise here on this plane, that the light, the brightness is going dim, and it's got something to do with, instead of moving externally, time to now move internally. The light is the source of sight, the source of wisdom, the source of intuition. There is also a tendency, because it is the moon's covering the sun, a possibility that we may be misled, that things may be in the shadow realms, in that they're veiled, that they may not be what they seem to be. People may not be what they perceive to be. Then as the eclipse moves through, the veils drop. So it is certainly a time to tune into your intuitive abilities, to gain more knowledge of situations and circumstances, as opposed to relying heavily on external forces. And when I came across this comment, I sort of, I won't say laughed to myself, because these days people tend to use things, social media like Facebook in particular, as their source of research. They'll just simply ask a question and act on a response given to whoever is answering it. So this is sort of a reminder: don't be reliant on other people solely. Do your own research and come up with your own responses. As I said, the new moon isn't recommended for manifestation at this time. It's not really recommended for setting intentions for the future. However, if you want to do this, it's very important that you utilize this time currently to go within instead. It's said close to the South Node, karmic connection, so it's about release, it's about endings, it's about letting go. If you want to move forward, then there are things that you need to tie up, to finalize first, to cut the ties which are holding you back, the past issues that may have surfaced during the last couple of months, to deal with, and prepare yourself for the shift in perspective as you set your new world order in relation to you, so that you can move forward. Okay, so on a personal level, leading up to the solar eclipse, we may have started to see a pattern of how we're being guided, where we're being asked to level up, so to speak, to improve ourselves. Some people also believe that eclipses are portals into new states of consciousness, and as such they can bring about events that will help shift us and transform our abilities to move forward on a higher, more spiritual level. So I'm not saying this is incorrect, but there are a number of interpretations on how you deal with eclipses. This eclipse too is sort of like the conclusion, as I mentioned, of one cycle in order for a new cycle to begin. So it is about opening the final door on this path, this sort of Sagittarius Gemini alignment, and it can also bring the rewards for any work that you've done along the way. Okay, there are a number of other planets that are hanging about. So the energy is drawing us towards allowing our energy to open up to become a magnet. There is Mercury and Neptune, who are very active at this time, suggesting some new information will be revealed to us. Neptune suggests that we may find the veil lifted, allowing ourselves to see a deeper truth in things. And as such, it's important to listen and trust your instincts, regardless of what insights may come. Neptune relates to spirituality and our intuition. So again, this is important for us to sort of drop into our heart center, to tune into the power and wisdom within, as opposed to solely relying on external sources. Especially when these external sources, should we say, aren't credible. Chiron, the wounded healer, will also be active, helping us to heal and mend broken relationships through healing conversations, including the relationships with ourselves. There is also Venus going into retrograde in Capricorn a few days after this eclipse. And Venus will actually be spending a longer than usual time in Capricorn. She'll be there until March next year. So Venus is a personal planet, relating to what's near and dear to us, what we value, love, money. So when it goes into retrograde, this tends to indicate that we may find ourselves re-evaluating our values, our relationships, and also how we view ourselves, how we rate ourselves, how we value our own self-worth, our own wisdom. One website I came across mentioned that on the 24th of December, which is Christmas Eve, we will be greeted with the third and final Saturn-Uranus or Uranus square for the year. Now, squares tend to cause a lot of tension because we've got Saturn, which is all about rules, boundaries, restrictions, yet Uranus or Uranus is about freedom, it's about revolutions. So this tension between these two planets can be interpreted of how we stay safe within the boundaries and the rules, and how we seek freedom within that safe environment. So this is the third conjunct of these two planets we've had this year. It'll be quite interesting due to the increasing reluctance or opposition, is probably the more appropriate word, but especially here in Australia, is getting voiced in relation to mandatory vaccinations, regardless of more mutant strains arriving and the situation not sort of becoming under control. As I record this, here in South Australia, in Adelaide, we've recently opened up our borders to interstate travellers, and we have now gone from, I think, 2 cases to 18 today due to our school reunion, and which is a little bit worrying because these people were out in the community for 5 days before this has been announced. So we've got this sort of tension between security, boundaries, rules, and freedom. I think it comes down to, as I mentioned earlier, dropping into your heart center and ascertaining where your conscious lies. Okay, we've also got Jupiter moving into Pisces at the end of the month on the 29th, and it'll be there till about May next year. So Jupiter, our largest planet, it's all about expansion, optimism, joy. Pisces is the soulful, intuitive, spiritual planet. And here there's a little bit of a reminder that from the 29th through to May, maybe start taking a little bit more conscious notes of your dreams. Record them a little bit more carefully. So listen a little bit more to your gut instincts, to your intuition, and seeing what's happening there. However, with Pisces can actually cause, again, this blurring, this veil aspect where things may not appear to be what they are, or not be as clear as they should be. So there is sort of like a caution to maybe not take everything on face value. Just seeing what else I've got here in my notebook. Solar eclipses happen at the new moon. It's sort of the new moon on steroids. It's a time to take our hands off the wheel, so to speak. Definitely not the time to be out there manifesting, as the moon will pass in front of the sun directly in line with the earth. And in doing so, this calls for a deep state of rebirth, of going inside of yourself and really looking at those relationships, those bonds, those connections, that we have that maybe we've been wondering how congruent they are with us, now is the time to well and truly let go of what needs to be let go. What we are experiencing inside is a realization we are both the creator and the created, the transformer and the transformed. We are not actually separated from the source, from Mother Earth. We are all connected. And I really like that last comment. That's actually from Pippa Kate Astrology. She's in Sydney, and again, as I said, I'll put the links below. So, good way to end the year. Still quite a bit happening, and as I said, there were so many other rabbit holes I could easily go down, but I've decided to stop it there. So I hope this has been of interest to you. Take care and blessings.